Okay. Welcome, everyone. I call to order the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for February 15th, 2024. It is 10 o'clock in the morning, and I will go ahead and lead us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Item C is calendar session. I noticed we did have the Department of Community Justice on the calendar. Did they get rescheduled? Maybe I missed that. Okay. For a work session. Okay. And I see President's Day is Monday, so the county offices are closed on Monday. Anything to add to the calendar? Okay. Okay. Item D is public comment. This time period is reserved for public comment on any topic other than an agenda item, a quasi judicial land use matter, or a topic scheduled for a public hearing. I do want to acknowledge that we received some written public comment. One of them was a letter from the YCAP board, or a member of the YCAP board. So thank you for that. We acknowledge that. However, I still didn't see any answers to some of our questions in that letter. So we will continue to wait for those responses. But anyone in the audience or online that has public comments, please raise your virtual hand or come forward. Okay, hearing none, we will move on to department updates. There's nothing today. Our work session, nothing for today. Item G is the consent agenda. Looks like we have some minutes and some personnel issues. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any further discussion?
None.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Oops. All right, item H is old business. There's nothing today. Item I is other business. I1 is consideration of approval of the initial professional services contract number PW 23006 CON and amendment number 1 between Yamhill County and David Evans and Associates, Inc. for the design repairs on 3 bridges in the total amount of $116,736.08. And it looks like there was an amendment for traffic control and utility coordination. I guess my question is, did we already approve the initial amount? Or are we just approving the amendment or?
So we approved the initial amount. It increased after we got past certain percentage phase of design. And they're going to do, instead of leaving one lane open for traffic to get by, it's actually going to save us money in the end if we just close it all down, which is where this, I guess, amendment came from. So it's costing a little bit more to do the engineering of this, but we're going to save more on the back end because we can just close everything down and do a different style of construction for this bridge. So in the end, it'll be cheaper.
Thank you. Okay, so it looks like it says approval of the initial contract. Is that just a wording
It appears that
issue?
my laptop decided I believe it was under 100,000, so it was within Ken's authority to decide originally. So
Oh, that's right.
we
Okay.
Come from the board previously, but now
Okay.
since it's been amended to exceed that amount,
Okay.
I imagine it's what.
Okay. Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Item I2, consideration of approval of amendment number 10 to a contract employment agreement between Yamhill County Health and Human Services and Janelle Werner Board Order 13-340 to provide professional clinic services decreasing from 30 hours per week to 20 hours per week effective February 24th of 2024. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you.
And Chair, before we get into the next agenda item, because I know that's going to be some discussion, have kind of a time-sensitive matter that I was kind of hoping to add to the agenda after, for number 4, I'd like to talk about the Budget Committee appointments
Okay.
and the status of that. There's some time constraints that, and I want to make sure that we have some time to be able to talk about that this morning.
Do you want to do that now?
I'd rather do it at
the end?
we can do that at the end
Okay.
after the next agenda item.
Okay.
So,
Budget Committee.
Thanks, Greg. He was just a little late. He was
Oh.
supposed to be here to answer.
Oh.
Oh.
Gotcha. Okay, item I3 is discussion of Yamhill County vaccine promotion policy, and this was added by Commissioner Stirrett.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Director Manfred, for being here. Over the past, shall we say, 3 or 4 years, Director Manfred and I and our administrator have had some conversations. I've been concerned about the messaging, and I feel that ultimately the buck stops with us. Recently, I was on a COVID lessons learned AOC HHS meeting, and one of the presenters was the Lane County Medical Director, Dr. Patrick Ludke, and I asked him about some of the misinformation, disinformation, no apologies, no updates on some of the information that's coming out about the COVID vaccines. And he said, well, I can't be responsible. We can't be responsible for the FDA or the CDC. So each agency should do its own mea culpa. And I think that public health, I think overall, has a black eye because there have been no retractions, no apologies, nothing in the way of, boy, we sure made some missteps along the way. I think that if we follow the money from Pfizer to CDC, FDA, OHA, it all trickles down and ultimately comes to Yamhill County Public Health. I think it's important for us to remember that we are responsible for the messaging that we give out. And I'd like to have a broader discussion about some of the social media and some of the messaging that we have been doing. I think the one thing that I want to make sure is that we are not pimping for Pfizer. Our job is to tell people that we have vaccines available, that we have medical interventions available, but I don't think it's our job to promote a narrative that has long since been discredited. One of the other things I'm concerned about is litigation. As we know, we have massive amounts of money in opioid settlement funds. I think the COVID litigation, which is ramping up very aggressively, we are going to see the big tobacco settlement, the asbestos settlement, opioid settlement. Actually, it's going to be chump change compared to what's going to happen with COVID litigation. There are lots of attorneys that are now forming consortiums to deal with the product liability. We have attorneys general in other states that are suing the FDA for deceitful practices, knowing that there's one set of data that they're not promoting. We're not telling folks about. I think it's important for us to remember that if we promote inaccurate or misleading information, that ultimately we are liable, and not only liable financially or for any kind of damages, but I also think ethically we have a responsibility to have people be able to trust us. There are just a number of social media posts that I think are go beyond telling people that we can provide vaccines. I've got screenshots of a number of them. Hopefully we can get to a point where we have a policy where we are basically telling people we now have enough data that is of concern. You know, there are lots of FOIA requests that have now, we've got recently as January 13th, we have FDA a data, Pfizer data, which basically is countering the narrative that we have gotten over the years. So if we look at the cardiac issues, if we look at some of the reproductive issues, stuff I brought up 4 years ago, it has now been borne out and it's come to light. So I've got reams and reams of information, not only about the safety, but about the efficacy, about the concerns regarding pregnant women being told when Pfizer knew that there was a safety concern about the COVID vaccine and pregnant women. They never studied it on pregnant women, and they made it clear in their trials they didn't want anyone who would become pregnant or could become pregnant. And now we're promoting that, continuing to promote that to women. The RSV vaccine, actually one of the vaccine companies had to pull their trials because of so many preterm births. We're not telling people that. And I think when we look at our website that says that we are committed to providing up-to-date information as it comes in, we're not only not doing that, but we are, I believe, complicit in basically making Pfizer the most important element of this. So I'm asking that we take a look at our social media, about our messaging around vaccines. And if people want to access any of these vaccines, it shouldn't be because we're promoting them as if we're a Pfizer rep in a doctor's office.
So we had extensive conversations about this through COVID in 2021, 22, and we centered those conversations around making sure that all information was available, specifically VAERS, the VAERS data that was coming in real time, right? And unfortunately, that was the attempt was to sort of discredit that information as we went along. But we focused on making sure that at least the website had links to reporting adverse effects or looking up VAERS data and making sure that it was clear that there is not just one side of the story, that there is risk with anything. And ultimately, the role of government was to make sure that we are simply information providers. It seems like, and we did some of that. It seems like now we've had these discussions more recently, but it seems like now, you know, the Oregon Health Authority and folks from the state, they continue to push this money through for COVID vaccines, COVID this and that. And it is continuing this narrative of that we've seen over the past 4 years. And I guess my question is, you know, what is the proper role of government? Is it to promote a vaccine? You know, we're not a pharmaceutical company. So what is the proper role of government? And is that being properly reflected in our messaging? And I am concerned about the significant warning signs that we're seeing throughout the country, throughout the world, frankly, in terms of the effect of this now 2 years later. You know, and the fact that they wanted basically everybody to zip their lips for 75 years and not talk about the results of the trials that they ran. So, yeah, it's interesting. When I saw this on the agenda, it made me think of a recent, and I didn't print it out, but there was a recent, I took a screenshot of it because it was horrific, but a recent CPRD, Chehalis Park and Rec District, vaccination clinic, social media messaging, and it's got Cupid in the middle, and there's about 50 needles pointed at Cupid. And it's rather horrific. And I took a screenshot of this because Yamhill County Public Health shared this. And to me, that is not something I ever would have approved. It's offensive and scary. And I do think that we need to sort of take a deeper dive on what we're putting out there in social media. Because I do think it is the proper role of government to say we have access to these things, but not to do stuff like this or to just simply parrot, what pharmaceutical companies are trying to sell. So it seems like that's what you're focused on, is more of the social media promotion aspect rather than maybe the website, if I'm understanding.
Well, I think it's important, since social media is pretty much the go-to, folks will have that come up and it will say, now's the time to get this vaccine, now's the time to get that. And then really a lot of the messaging seems to be, this is pretty much the only way, or the major way that you will avoid getting very sick. Just so that we are clear, there have been no studies on pairing the COVID vaccine and the influenza vaccine, and we're pushing people to do both. So we don't have any studies that show what happens long-term if you do these two together. Those are things people, I think, would really appreciate knowing. So again, what I'm saying is, when we see messages from Yamhill County Public Health on Facebook, on Instagram, and if it is this repetitive message of vaccines, 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 and all of the pluses, our job is, again, not to pimp these, but to basically say, if you want them, here they are. Do your own research.
Okay. So the goal of the discussion is what are you seeking in terms of the goal of this discussion? Are you wanting policy change in terms of how we deal with social media?
Well, I think overall messaging, and that's been the discussion that Director Manfred and I and our administrator have had over the years. It's come to the place where I said, at one point, Director Manfred said, I want to make sure that, I'm not taking direction from one commissioner. And then I agree with that. And that is why I think we're here before the board, because I don't know what the next step is process-wise when we're looking at, and frankly, I'm concerned about some of the other messaging on our Yamhill County Public Health Facebook pages, but that's a discussion for another time. Seems to be highly agenda driven, and I think it oversteps the bounds of public health and goes into a very definite agenda. So I will leave that discussion for another time, but I think we need to focus on what we, number one, ethically, morally, now that we've got information that has come out in the 500,000 pages of clinical data from Pfizer and from the FOIA requests from CDC and FDA. So this is not some tinfoil hat website. This is the primary research communications from these agencies. And it is damning to the narrative that we have heard. Now, if that's information that we either don't know, then shame on us. If we know it and aren't including it in our narrative, double shame on us. So we're still getting stuff as of January 13th with the FDA coming out. It's almost like we saw this coming. We tried to raise some alarms about it. We were called anti-vaxxers, conspiracy theorists. Frankly, at this point, the conspiracy theories have come true to the point where it's like, this is unconscionable. So the data is out there, and I would like to make sure that litigation-wise, ethically, we can restore some trust to public health. The rest of the state can do what they want. Certainly not something OHA seems to be. They've been extremely deceitful. We've tried to get information for them over the last years, and they just tell us that this data doesn't exist. I've got emails from OHA saying we don't have any data about really basic stuff we know they have. So I will leave it there, and I will just say that as far as our public-facing message about vaccines, I think we need to be careful.
Okay. So I guess Director Manfred is here. I have a question for you, Lindsay, if you might want to come up. Thank you for joining us. We talked a little bit about this couple years ago, so it's not fresh in my mind, but who's sort of in charge of this social media messaging from public health? Is that go through your office or someone else? Or-
Yes, it's not through my direct office in terms of, do I review every social media post? No, but we have staff who are at public
Okay.
health who put together calendars and then message out
Okay.
each month, usually through pre-planned messaging.
Okay. And we haven't heard from Commissioner Johnston, so I want to, make sure you can have your thoughts on record, but
Yeah, I'm-
Well-
I'm still perusing all of the posts right now since you showed me the pink one. I guess my biggest concern is I want to make sure if we do something, it doesn't affect our alcohol, tobacco programs. But the pink one, I found that one, the Valentine's Day one. My biggest problem with that one is they're offering treats.
yeah,
It's very, very odd.
right, which we
You know,
said
if we
weren't
are
gonna
offering
do.
information, just offer the information. Why are you having to offer a little extra something for it? I don't know. It's odd.
Yeah, and we had that discussion during COVID is we don't want to be, it's not ethical to offer goodies in exchange for vaccines.
Yeah, and just to clarify that, that was a CPRD sponsored event.
Right.
That
Right, but we're
wasn't-
promoting
Yeah, no,
it.
yeah.
It was shared by our public health department.
Yeah.
We're promoting it. So in my view, that crossed the line because we've already been down that road and we said we're not going to be offering goodies for vaccines. And it's just really horrific marketing in the first place.
And like, I mean, here's another one for the back to school for kids. Saying kids may not be allowed to go back to school if they don't have a vaccine. But if you're going to, in my opinion, I guess if you're going to do that, there's also exemptions for that too, to make sure we,
Yeah, I don't believe there are any posts about school exclusion that don't include exemption information.
okay. This is me just literally scrolling
Absolutely.
right now.
And so if you find one, you can let me know, but I, as you can imagine, after,
My point is
Yeah.
I'm not like doing super big digs into these. I'm like literally just reading the top and seeing pictures, so.
Yeah, another thing comes to mind, it's not related to vaccines, but it's related to sort of behavioral health messaging that has come up this week. That as we're looking at, and this came up during our YCOM meeting, but the number of overdose related high level 911 calls. So, the highest level, they're not breathing, they're not responsive. The number of calls that people self-report are as a result of overdose have skyrocketed in this past year in 2023. And it was stated that behavioral health, the response to that is, well, it's because of Measure 110, because now we've reduced this stigma of illicit drug use. And so now people are more comfortable saying that they just overdosed, which doesn't match the other statistics in the sense that our overdose deaths in Oregon have quadrupled since 2019 in the last year. So I'm just concerned that it seems like public health, the messaging in general, and this isn't necessarily specific to Yamhill County, but in general, it seems like there is a high level of sort of a politically driven message rather than focused on obvious reality of what's happening on the ground. And obviously this debate is happening right now with Measure 110 in the legislature, but that was really concerning to me, that behavioral health's response to that very significant real data set is, oh, well, that's just because of Measure 110. I would argue that it's not. It's because people are using more and people are having higher rates of overdose deaths because there are no consequences anymore to using
Who
these.
presented this behavioral health response?
This was in our YCOM meeting yesterday.
So somebody from HHS or somebody from behavioral health was
No,
there and
the
presented
director of
information?
YCOM reported that this is what behavioral health's response to these shocking numbers are. And she works directly with behavioral health,
Okay.
communicates with. So
I'm not aware of
that's-
anyone who has the authority to speak on behalf of behavioral health, who would have been involved in those conversations, but I would be happy to look into it if I got more information. At this point, I don't know what meeting we're talking about or who may have made statements.
Okay, well, we're not just hearing it here. We're hearing it in the legislature as these bills are being discussed. So that's my concern, is that there just seems, it seems like, there is no local control over any of the messaging anymore. We have directives from OHA and we just have to sign on the dotted line and, whether we like it or not. But again, I go back to my original point, which is what's the proper role of government? What's the proper role of the county? Is it to make these things accessible? Sure. Is it to promote something, a product of a company that, and we are not a pharmaceutical company, I would say no. So I guess I would just encourage kind of going back to basics in terms of messaging, that we do make these things available, that they are free in many ways, right? There's no barrier to receiving these things. And in my view, that is promotion. It's promotion of the services that we provide. But some of the stuff, I mean, like the Cupid thing that we shared, to me, that's so far over the line of appropriate that I can understand why you're concerned about some of this.
When are we gonna get our links fixed? I've been trying to click on links and it goes to, it didn't work. On the website, every time you try to
Right.
click a link, it doesn't work to go to our website.
If there's specific issues with the links, if there's something to click on, if you let me know.
Okay.
Because we're trying to tell, we have a lot of links in the website.
Okay.
So if we have any broken links or anything, if you bring it to my attention. Yeah.
Are you talking about from the Facebook page to the website?
Yeah, I was just,
I noticed that
From
too, and I
HHS.
thought, well, maybe it was because it was
From
on.
Facebook.
Mhm.
yes, from so I'm just scrolling HHS and I'm on the kids vaccine one, clicking the link and it,
Because if that was an old one before we migrated to the new website, that's,
will never be good.
It'll never be good. We didn't intend to go back in time and clean up all the various Facebook posts or things like that. That website is no longer active. It's a completely different.
URL or whatever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Huh.
Yeah.
So, I would say it's the information, which is, because we want people to get to the most current information on there. So if that post is pretty old, but if there's specific areas or if you find something in one of our newer posts and with our migration.
Well, I mean, like, not to get off subject, but yesterday was fair. I'm trying to find ambassador applications and I can't, the link from Facebook doesn't work. So I have people asking me, well, here, go here. And they're like, it doesn't work. So,
There's a lot of. Falling out of the website.
okay.
We're getting it one by one.
Commissioner, do you have suggestions on where we go? Like I said, my instinct is to just go back to basics and keep it simple and not, and make sure the messaging isn't inaccurate by omission.
Yeah, I think that we would err on the side of caution, especially now that sort of the rumblings are that there are, you've got litigation in a number of different states. And I think not only that, but I think if we can err on the side of name, rank, and serial number, we will cover a multitude of sins here. One of the things on the HHS website is that says Yamhill County Public Health is committed to sharing local, accurate, and current information as we hear it, and will continue to update this page as more information becomes available. It would be impossible and unreasonable to try to keep up with all the stuff that's coming out, because it's coming out fast and furious on some of the information we're now getting, the receipts, I call them. It's just thousands and thousands of pages. So that would be, unreasonable. But what I think we can do to play it safe is to say, we have these vaccines available at public health, or contact your local health provider, and leave it there. That would be my recommendation. And I don't think we are running afoul of our contract with OHA to promote, because I didn't see anywhere in those contracts that required us to promote on Facebook or social media. So promotion, again, I would think would be, we have these available. Please do your own research, please make your own decision, and there you go. Not our job to convince you that it's something you should do.
I did see on there for the kids one, it's in the picture and it says unless necessary exemptions are in place. So it is there. It's just not in the upload.
We've worked really hard to make sure that that is captured in all of our messaging related to that.
Okay, well, I mean, it sounds like, I don't think this is something we need to vote on, maybe we do, but it sounds like there's a consensus of the board that we need to work on our social messaging, social media messaging when it comes to vaccines specifically, and move more towards a back to basics, access driven message.
Yeah,
And I don't like the CPRD stuff. I just
Yeah,
think that's inappropriate.
I'll just say, and speaking on behalf of staff, and, we've had this discussion in the past. If there's specific policy direction that the board would like to convey to staff, I would recommend that there be some, because the challenge is what's the sideboards? There was a lot of discussion. Are we talking vaccines? Are we talking about not publishing tobacco prevention? Are we talking, what are the lines? That's any type of strong policy direction or statement or policy document. Again, you have a policy statement in place. So then we're ensuring that we're complying with that policy, and should we cross a line, or there's an accountability question because you don't believe we're complying with the policy, that's why I would strongly recommend that if the board is wanting to give a policy directive on the medias, that there be some sideboards and some description and the board actually take formal action on it. So then that way I can work with Lindsay. Lindsay's working with her team to make sure that we're complying with the policy direction that we're being given.
Well, I would agree, but I feel like we've already done that. When it comes to COVID vaccines, we had a very lengthy discussion about offering incentives specifically, and we said, no,
Which
that's
we've
not
done.
acceptable. But
It-
now we're sharing incentive posts. I mean, that's, in my view, that's a violation of the policy that we discussed.
Yeah.
I don't think we had an actual policy. We had a discussion, and I think we all came to,
Except for I would just, because we're here today and this was an agenda item and there was questions being raised, because like the including exemption language in the for the vaccine requirements, including statements, which all the posts also have, is consult with your, help your doctor, your medical provider, or, a trusted information. We have that information that's in there. We've included in the past links to VAERS data. We've included a lot of those things, yet it seems, at least based on this discussion, there's concerns that more policy direction is warranted at this point. And
at this point, I'm unclear if we're only talking about vaccines, because I'm hearing statements like, especially vaccines, which leads me to think that perhaps there are other things. So are we allowed to say that we recommend women take folic acid or folate while they're pregnant to prevent neural tube defects? Is that okay, or is that not okay? Is it okay to recommend people consider nicotine replacement if they're trying to stop smoking? Is it okay for us to recommend that if you are a sexually active woman who doesn't want to get pregnant, that we recommend that you consider getting on birth control, right? Like, these are the pieces of messaging that happens through public health frequently. And when we make blanket statements, it's hard for me to give direction to staff and for myself to even understand how narrow or broad are we talking. And those were just a few examples that came to mind.
I think the concern is, it's clear the concern is not about recommending vitamin supplementation or birth control. That's not the issue. I think the issue is when we're talking about a pharmaceutical product that has significant safety concerns. And that is really all. So we're not talking about tobacco. We're not talking about, I mean, I think the messaging about alcohol is spot on. The messaging about vaping is spot on. You've got information about birth control. All of it is out there. What I would say is when we are letting people know we have vaccines, we should allow them the information that we provide access and nothing more. So it would be very, in other words, very clear and concise information about this is where you get, we have these vaccines available. This is where you can get them. That's it, period.
So recommendations, no incentives.
Not recommendations. I don't think we can make recommendations. I think that's the whole point. We have the availability of these vaccines.
Here's your information. And then
What
no.
information, though? In other words, if you're
That we
talking,
offer it, I guess.
we
would be-
offer it.
So we offer it, but we're not gonna, I hate to go back to CPRD one because it's not our post. But an example of that would be us sharing a CPRD post that offers a treat if you come get a vaccine. If you pull that out of that, is that okay now? Here's your information. There is no bribe or whatever you want to call it to come get the vaccine. Is that an okay post? Is that, I guess, narrowed down enough and have enough sideboards on it to be a policy?
I'm not so concerned. We already know that that offering an incentive is something that we had all agreed we were not going to be promoting. It was reposted, so it really, again, came from us since we reposted it. That being said, what I'm concerned about is that we would be promoting in any other way a vaccine other than to say, this vaccine, this vaccine, this vaccine, all vaccines are available through public health and your healthcare provider. That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Anything beyond that goes into the, promotion of, again, a one-sided narrative. I want people to get all the information, and I don't think we have the bandwidth to provide it, or perhaps the political will to provide it all. So the short and sweet, as I said, name, rank, and serial number. These vaccines are available. Go here, here, and here. Or here's the link to our website for more information.
Okay, well, it sounds like, Ken, you would prefer, and perhaps Director Manfred would prefer a more fleshed out policy that we then consider and vote on.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a full policy, but even if it's a motion with that policy directive, I mean, that would be sufficient,
If as the local public health administrator, I'm not able to say things like, we generally recommend most people 6 months old and older get an annual flu shot, check with your healthcare provider to talk about the risks and benefits and if it's right for you. If I'm not able to say that, I would like that in writing so that it's very clear that it's not me as the local public health administrator making that decision.
No, it would be the local public health authority.
It would be, and that's what I mean. I would like that in writing so
Okay.
that it's clear where the directive is coming from.
Sure. And so if we want a motion, I would make a motion that the local public health authority is making a motion that Yamhill County Public Health and through HHS it limits pharmaceutical posts, vaccine posts to availability. And that's it.
Okay. I guess I would feel more comfortable seeing kind of what we're, like a policy, even if it's short, written out
Okay.
on as to what we're voting on. So that it's more specific.
Well, we can have it as a other business or old business next week, if you'd want something that's more defined.
Okay, how do you feel about that? I
Yeah,
just-
I would definitely put this off a week. There's a lot to do, of research to do on this. If I'm just gonna be, I just don't want to be handed there's some homework to be done here.
Sure.
Okay, well, in the meantime, we will look at potential a potential policy directive or mission statement, whatever you want to call it, something that further defines our philosophy around how we're going to do these things as the local public health authority. And we'll bring it back.
Okay.
Mm.
Right.
Just for the sake of Robert's rules, there was a motion. Are you going to rescind that motion?
I'll rescind my motion.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
today, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, so we have an add-on as item I4, which is our budget committee discussion for Ken.
Yes, thank you. So in looking at the roster and then having a conversation, at least with a couple commissioners, it sounds like one of our budget committee members is at least notified a couple commissioners that of a resignation. I haven't received anything official yet, but I went into the budget committee roster, and if in fact we are going to have a vacancy, that Doreen's not able to continue, even though I haven't received anything official. So but also Jason Fields is up for reappointment. His came up quickly because if you remember, he was appointed to fill a vacancy, a resignation. So because that's how, if there's a vacancy before the
just fill
term
their
is
term.
up, you serve out the remainder of that term. With the board's permission, I was just going to reach out to Jason and first see if he's interested in continuing to serve, and I could bring that back as a motion if the board's okay with me doing that. And then the second part would be, because we have a pretty quick turnaround, that we're going to want to, hopefully I'll hear something official, but again, she shared it with two commissioners. But I'd like to open up, this is one of those committee positions that we usually do see a lot of interest in, probably planning commission and budget committee are probably the two. And I'd like to recommend that we do an open recruitment. I'll post it on the website. We'll set a close date for March 8th. So then that way, we'll have it closed. So there's something definitive on when the board would then review the applications. And then we could schedule either a work session or an agenda item for March 14th to discuss the applications and possibly make an appointment. Not that you have to do it that day if you wanted to go through some other process. I'm just trying to figure out the calendar.
What date did you say to
March
discuss?
14th. So a close date of March 8th and a close date of March 14th. And that way would give sufficient time to, I want to make sure that we have a fully seated budget committee. We have to have one in order to adopt the budget. And I also want to give any new appointee enough time to be able to attend a DOR training if they want to, or read through some of I have an email that I usually put out to budget committee members. It provides an overview, budget instructions, links to the DOR website, links to review our current budget. So that way they can kind of get up to speed. And then even at times they'll, I'll sit down with a new budget committee member so they're not coming in on day one of in the first week of May, getting overwhelmed when everyone's throwing all these GL codes and budget numbers and everything else at them.
So is that something you can share more broadly as far as anybody who's interested, so they know what they would be applying for?
Mhm.
Do we do that?
I can do that. I can put together a write-up that kind of like a recruitment and kind of explain what's all involved with it. A lot of it's governed by statute and Oregon budget law, but I don't want to necessarily bore them with that element. But I have a synopsis and a brief summary of what's involved with that.
Okay. Yeah, that would be helpful, because then when people ask us, what do I have to do? We can
Correct.
say, here you go.
The biggest part or the biggest commitment, of course, is budget week, that budget committee
Yeah.
week, the 3 full days of budget meetings, which sometimes can go a little longer than that. And there are times like with, if we ever end up in a position with a supplemental budget or if it's over a certain threshold, that we have to reconvene the budget committee in other times of the year. And then also the role as the compensation committee that has come up from time to time. Usually that's tied to the budget process, the last day of the budget committee meetings, but the elected official compensation committee.
I haven't looked at the calendar, but is it May 6, 7, 8, 9?
It's actually, I say the first week of May, but it's actually the last week of April, first day of May. So it's, I don't have a calendar in front of
So
me.
29, 30, and then 1, 2.
Correct.
Okay.
And we'll post that on our website as a vacancy.
And post it on the website, and I'll also share it with the commissioners. So if the commissioners also want to circulate that, you know, you can do that. I know you all like to share openings.
Circulating now.
Okay, so we'll get that posted here ASAP. And then you said applications would be due Friday, March 8th.
Correct,
And we'll consider and discuss on the following Thursday on 14th.
correct.
And then the reappointment, if Jason is interested, would be on the 8th.
Actually, if he's interested, that's something I could bring up beforehand.
When is his term up?
June 30th of 23.
Oh,
Oh,
So their terms coincide with the budget year.
Okay.
when they're
Oh, that's
appointed,
right.
And it was
Yeah.
one, this sneaks up. We had to do the same thing with Denny the last time
Yeah.
as well.
Okay.
but Denny's okay. He's
Yep.
goes.
so he
for-
could have went on vacation and never even knew it.
Actually,
guy.
Denny's term expires in June 30
This
of
year.
this year.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't give them a choice.
And Doreen App's term expires June 30th, 2025.
25. Okay.
And they're
So the new one will expire.
June
whoever.
30th, 2025.
Are they 4-year terms?
They're 3-year terms,
3.
but this one is to serve out the remainder of Doreen's term.
Yeah.
Oh,
3
okay,
years.
so it would go to, okay.
That way it makes sure that we always have on a staggered schedule.
Okay. I will remind her again, but I thought she had contacted you.
And
but-
she may have, and I
Okay.
probably just,
Okay.
Okay, well, that would be good. That'll give a little over a month for that person to prepare then. If we do it at that point. All right, any other questions on that? All right, I think that's it for other business. Oh, I did want to have a discussion real quick. I suppose it would be other business, but so there is and Ken, kind of jump in here too, but there's a weekly department head meeting that our county administrator hosts every Tuesday morning. And this is a meeting for him to kind of check in with not only our appointed department heads, but also our elected officials throughout the county, other than commissioners. And I have asked to sit in on some of those, and they've been very helpful, I think, for me in terms of giving me a perspective of how the higher levels of the county, interact with each other and kind of what the issues are that are going on between personnel or budget or, even operational things. typically don't participate. I'm the fly on the wall and I just listen, but I have requested that that I attend these meetings on a weekly basis. I don't think it's something that we necessarily would have to rotate in. I think that as the liaison to administration in general, it probably should be that commissioner that attends these meetings. And it's not really something I would report back to you on necessarily. It's more of an informational, gathering thing for me and just observation. But I do think it gives the ability for commissioner liaison to observe and kind of assess how our county administrator interacts with the rest of the staff. And obviously we oversee the county administrator and county council. So it's an opportunity for us to do that. And I think that so far it's been very positive in terms of me understanding how everything is interconnected. So, I don't know if it's something where we have to discuss and technically have to have permission on to attend, but that's what I would like to do. I'd like to be attending every Tuesday morning.
Is that the meeting? I remember we used to meet in here. What was that? Is that a different meeting? Everybody used to sit in a square and it was everybody.
We used to, at least, at least for budget instructions, when we do that once a year and it wasn't as frequent. But the management roundtables that we used to do, it's not necessarily the same. But, I have offered that if we wanted to, as a suggestion, if the board is interested in hearing more updates beyond just when department heads come here and present updates, as scheduling some type of management roundtable on some type of frequency to where we get the entire management team together. The nature that this is a meeting that I've called that originally started, it was just strictly with my direct reports. It was just a meeting to check in with my direct reports. And then COVID happened and then wildfires happened and things like that. And we found that, yeah, I needed to get some of the other department heads, which included the elected department heads, to join the meetings. And, we do use this. This is my ability to, one, encourage department heads to make sure they're communicating and not in silos. And it also enables me to talk about sometimes sensitive personnel issues or trends or things that may be coming up, provide coaching on, new collective bargaining agreement language, talk about investigation processes, talk about other trends that we might be seeing with it. And it's really for me to interact with basically the county management team. And it's evolved over time where it was getting too big. Because I'm also trying to make sure it's not intended to be just for kind of like, even though there's times that we don't have any major agenda items, but it's not really intended to be kind of the generic updates. We try to reserve those updates for coming here to the board or things like that, because we know that I'm very deliberate when it comes to scheduling meetings as someone who has way too many meetings on my calendar. This was a way to kind of alleviate where I'm able to connect with some of the department heads without necessarily having to set up individual meetings with everyone and make sure that we're still connecting and so again, this is one of my management tools that I use for making sure I'm staying engaged and being aware of potential issues that could be coming that may have a widespread effect, whether it's personnel, labor, policy, budget. Someone's considering to go after a grant or do something, and maybe there's a chance that, well, hey, if you were going after that, we have this program element too, we should probably talk. So again, it was my attempt to kind of tear down silos. It wasn't intended to be kind of an update that it turned into on some occasions, but I do want to give everyone has an opportunity to kind of provide updates of what's going on in their office. The reason again, I just want to make sure, one, I have meetings with individual commissioners during the week, and I'm more than happy to, convey what I'm learning at those meetings and bring that back, because I want to make sure all the commissioners are getting fully informed on things. I don't necessarily want, I want to be careful with that if a commissioner feels like they're not in the loop on something that may have been coming out of the department. At the same time, the challenges and, the nice parts with public meetings laws is the full transparency, but sometimes there's discussions that where, I need to be able to have, whether it's personnel or labor or some of those things that, and so if we had the full board there's going to be some limitations, and I don't want department heads to kind of withhold speaking freely with the intent, well, this isn't ready to go public, or this is a delicate personnel matter that I'm sharing because other folks need to have a heads up that if there's a trend or an issue that's coming up that, so I want to make sure that I get two-way communication. So it's not me kind of signing in and I'm the only one talking in the room, because then that's a lecture. It's not a meeting. So I just say that it's evolved over time because we've had a lot of things of whether it's dealing with office closures or modifications or who's doing what or responding to incidents or doing some of the emergency management or response things that we've had to do in the past. That's another format. And this meeting has just evolved over the years, and the department heads really seem to like having these meetings and getting together. So there's some value to it.
Is there good participation in them?
Yeah.
I remember those meetings. It seemed like it was a really long time ago, but all the commissioners would be here. And sometimes that was the only time
Mhm.
we actually saw everybody together and heard what was going on, because really typically it has to be filtered through you, or if it's our liaison, we might hear from them. But as far as whatever everybody else is doing, so I don't think it's necessarily, I think more information is not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-mm.
I think in your one-on-one meetings with department heads is, I would think, the time for more of that, the sensitive stuff that really should just be dealing with really private personnel things. Because I know we have to be real careful about that. But I don't see it as a bad thing for a commissioner or alternating commissioners or somebody to be there to hear what's going on. I don't see it as I don't see the downside. And I also don't see it as an impediment to you being the one who's driving the bus on that. I mean, that's your wheelhouse, and those are your areas there in terms of personnel and department heads. But I also think there's nothing that ultimately doesn't come to the board at some point. So I don't see anything wrong with it. I thought those meetings we used to have were not frequent enough, and it was helpful, but we were all there. All three of us were there.
Right. And that's something that went away many years ago. And if that's something that the board would like to see more of, like on a quarterly basis, or, I could put something together, but
Yeah, but in the meantime, and I don't see it as an either or. I think it's great for
Well, we-
everyone to get
yeah.
together, but I don't see anything wrong with. a
I'm not
commitment.
proposing that we make it all three of us, because that would be then a public meeting, but, I'm certainly open to rotating if we want to do like every quarter,
Yeah.
have it be a different one of us that can attend those meetings, and, because I'm not going to be able to attend every Tuesday. So maybe we just do a rotation, so that it doesn't become that. But, yeah, I mean, it's, and this is one thing we've talked about before, is performance reviews that we have to conduct on you guys. Well, how do we do that if we can't really see some of we hear the negative, right? Nobody ever talks about positive, unfortunately. So this has given me an opportunity to see positive. So I really like that. And it does help me understand how our departments are interconnected. So if we want to do like a rotation, that's totally fine. It's just another thing we have to track. So
Well, I think since the chair has a liaison to all of administration. And maybe if you can't do it, then the vice chair and then down to here so that somebody is there. I don't think it's a bad thing for each commissioner to have an opportunity. So if there's a time when you can't do it, maybe we could
But
volunteer.
I would have it follow like all of our other liaison duties. So if they're that department, they stick with that department. And when it changes is if you're unavailable and it moves on down,
Right.
or it changes because we've changed position.
Sure.
So.
Yeah,
I'm-
that makes sense.
You mean liaison duties?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so that would mean then that I'm attending every week. If I can't make it, then I would send it to you
Or offer it.
or offer it, yeah.
I mean, and
Okay.
I'm guessing you're not going to make it every week, but if you are, and then Commissioner Johnston is.
Are we all in
available.
one room for this or is it Zoom?
Is it a Zoom meeting?
It's
It's both.
Teams.
Where does it? Is it
Right
in
now,
here?
we do it in teams, but, you know, I've been talking because I need to get folks back together in person from
Yeah.
time to time.
Because
so-
that's the other thing that would make him like, I just roll up behind Ken and over his shoulder on his Zoom camera. Yep.
We've done that before. You and I have done that. Is it here? Is it held?
No, we haven't done it in room 32. We haven't met in person in quite a
Oh,
while.
so you're not. Okay.
But my plans, we've been talking about it quite a bit, and at least once a month, we're gonna try to meet in person.
Okay.
Okay, so it sounds like there's consensus on that.
Sure.
Okay, so I don't think there's anything else for other business. Item J is public hearings, nothing today, and that brings us to announcements. Commissioners, any announcements?
Just that the OSU Extension Service has hired Kaylani Cruz. So I think we've all had the opportunity to sit in on those interviews and there were a couple of good candidates. The thing that I really appreciate is that she has signaled that she's really interested in extending the 4-H opportunity to kids who might not have those opportunities, foster kids, kids who might not have parents who are super engaged. And I think 4-H is definitely the key to keeping kids out of trouble. And she has been, I've introduced her to Marla with our Family Wellbeing Council, who's going to be inviting her to our foster parent, resource parent sub-meeting so that we can start to actually get these parents hooked up.
Yeah, her background really, I think, lends itself well to expanding the reach of
Mhm.
that organization. So excited to see what she does and excited to meet her.
Yeah.
Sounds like we'll have some opportunities to meet her soon. All right, any other further announcements?
That's it.
Just a quick update on, we had our YCOM executive meeting. That was actually Tuesday, not yesterday. But YCOM is having staffing challenges. There's quite a few folks that are going to be leaving pretty soon. So, you know, she's facing a lot of the same challenges that everybody else is facing, but I have full faith and confidence in Patty Sowers. She is an absolutely phenomenal asset to this county.
Yeah.
So thorough, so dedicated and knowledgeable. And I just wanted to give her a shout out because I very much appreciate her. And other than that, the Amity City County Dinner is tonight, so hopefully we'll see everybody in Amity.
Were we supposed to give gifts for that or was that just the,
County one,
I think that was just the county.
the one the county hosted.
that went to Grand Ron?
Yeah,
Right.
I don't think we technically do gifts, or usually.
Unless we're hosting it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I had Parkway this morning, Parkway Committee. Definitely getting more positive now. They got their project labor agreement all done. It goes out for bid, I think, April 2nd now. So they're actually very hopeful that they'll start construction work this summer on phase 2A.
Mhm.
2B, there's proceeds from 2A that were left, or to phase 1A. This gets really confusing. For purchasing right of way. So they're using those extra funds and going after 2B now to purchase right of way for 2B, which is Rex Hill 99
Mhm.
interchange. So it's progressing, but good news is 2A, which is Winooski interchange overpasses, they're going in and it's going to start this summer. That's all I got.
Sounds good. Oh, and briefly, I testified against House Joint Resolution 201 in Salem. This is the proposed work group or advisory group that would look at referring to the ballot a statewide property tax. This would be similar to the fire service tax that a lot of folks pay statewide. And it was proposed to go to quote unquote public safety. And so the hearing room was packed with folks opposing it. I think there were over 400 people there to oppose it. And the only people that came forward supporting it was the firefighter union. I think the concern overall is just that, number one, it's another property tax, but number two, it goes into this black hole of something called public safety with the state's very poor track record of transparency and accountability when it comes to that stuff. So Representative Scharf mentioned last night that she believes that that bill is dead. So hopefully that remains the case. And our constituents, at least at this point, are protected from that. But we'll watch it going forward. Any other announcements?
Yeah, thank you for testifying.
All right, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I will adjourn the Yamaha County Board of Commissioners formal session for February 15th, 2024. It is 11:07. Thank you.